So without further ado, let's talk about how to increase online lead generation for cyber and tech companies. For those of you who haven't met me or been on a webinar of mine before, my name is Daniel Jenkins, and I'm Head of Client Services here at WAGADA Digital. Don't hesitate to follow me on Twitter at DanWJenkins, or you can scan that lovely QR code on the screen and reach out and connect with me on LinkedIn, so that we can follow up the conversation after there as well. But it's not all about me. I'm part of a fantastic team of specialists across 2 offices in Hertfordshire, which is where our flagship office is. We've been going now for over 10 years, offering digital marketing services, and also our second office in Cheltenham. I'm currently zooming in from Evesham in the west of England. Sorry, I'm actually zooming in from Cheltenham. I'm based in Evesham. I look after our west of England office. And we work with clients across the UK and internationally. We have a number of specialisms, of which one is obviously the cybersecurity, IT, and SaaS industries. We work with a number of brands in this sector. And we have done now for a few years. We've got some really exciting clients that we're doing work with, international brands such as Comforte, some really exciting UK-based organizations that offer either cyber solutions, online tools, software as a service and as a solution. Yeah, and there's just a few of them that you can see on the screen here. So if you do wish to pick up the conversation with me afterwards, we definitely have a huge amount of experience within this sector, and I'd be very, very excited to talk further. You can also get access to our case studies on our website. I'll make sure the link will be in the in what you get in the follow-up, but you can read about some of the examples of the work we've done with the likes of CAE, Comforte, and Pixatope, to name just 3. So what are we going to look at? Well, we're going to talk a little bit about how to use your website as a tool to build trust within your target audience. We're also going to showcase your expertise and position yourself as a thought leader in the tech industry and increase your website visibility to ensure that you're reaching the right audience. We're also going to look at how you can create compelling content that resonates with your target audience at every stage of the customer journey. So let's talk a little bit about marketing for cyber and tech brands and make sure that we're approaching this from a strategy perspective. Now, I'm sure you're all joining from sort of organizations of varying sort of sizes and varying teams and numbers. Some of you may have a whole marketing entity, some of you may not, and be very, very sales driven. But the truth is that you've got to approach this from all directions. Now, this is a general kind of strategic approach whereby we talk about the 7 Ps. So we're looking at the product, the promotion, the price, the place, the people, the process, and the physical evidence. And it's about ensuring that as a business, as an organization, you have all 7 of these as part of your offering. Are you considering the people, the processes of how you work, the physical evidence, how you actually deliver your product? But obviously what we're going to be talking about a lot today is the promotional elements of this, you know, your website, your online presence, and how you can tie in the other elements of the marketing mix, all these other areas, the people, the process, how you can then better position that and better communicate that through your advertising of your offering and indeed your online presence through your website. So let's talk about strategy, because a clear marketing strategy is essential for business success. It defines the long-term plan for how a product or a service will achieve and maintain a competitive advantage in an identified market. And establishing this upfront aligns the organization around how you will reach your target audience, explain the benefits of your offering to them, and encourage them to become customers. So I'm going to show you a basic model here, which is hugely effective for strategy. And I'm going to talk about how you can apply that in the cyber and tech industry before we start to delve a little bit into your website and how you can tailor your online presence to generate more leads within your sector. So the first thing that we always look at is your situation analysis. So that is, where are we now? So as an organization within your sector, what is the current landscape that we are working within, and how do we approach that? Well, I've put together a resource here that you can take a look at in the deck, and it's an example of how you might look at competitors within a marketing landscape. And to give you an idea, you might want to do a bit of a rundown, and you can use a number of tools to do this. But let's say you were a WatchGuard partner and you worked with a brand like WatchGuard and you sold WatchGuard solutions. You might want to take a step back and look at other organizations within that space and how they're performing. So what is their website domain authority, for example? Domain authority is where we can analyze how highly ranked, not how highly ranked a website is within Google, but the authority that that website has in the eyes of Google, so that when you're doing keyword targeting, when you're trying to be more visible, what is the DA? What is the domain authority of that site? And a tool called Moz will get you that. Check that out if you haven't heard of Moz already. You might be able to look at what kind of website traffic these brands are generating, or the number of keywords on page one, whether they're ranking for certain phrases, how much branded traffic they're getting, so on and so forth. You'll see I've left a column empty there, brand name searches on Google. If you want to find out a little bit more about that, drop me a line and we'll chat about how you can look at looking up how many times people are searching for a brand name, which can give us a good idea of brand awareness, both for your organization, but also other organizations within your sector, so that you know where you sit in terms of brand awareness. How many people are actively searching for your brand? How many people are actively searching per month for WAGADA Digital, for example, versus those that are searching for digital marketing solutions, SEO strategy for cyber and tech companies, that sort of thing. Something else that we then want to build out is some objectives. And this is something that should be multi-layered. So quite often I've found that businesses, especially within kind of the IT, tech, cyber industries, they know what their growth targets are. So they'll tend to know where they want to be in terms of, well, look, we generated 1.3 million last year. We want to generate 1.7 this year. So we want to grow by £400,000 over a 12-month period. That's often the ultimate goal, for example. That might be a business goal. However, have you taken a step back and actually looked at how you're going to achieve that? Where do you want to be, and how are you going to generate a website plan and a website content plan that's going to get you there? And something that is fundamentally important within the cyber and tech industry in 2023 that I'm going to be talking a lot about in a moment is your content marketing. So building out a highly effective content marketing plan is going to be fundamentally important. Welcome to those who are just joining. You will get a copy of the recording after this session as well. So where do we want to be? Well, in this example, we might build out some KPIs. So whilst you might have ultimate revenue generating goals, let's look at that on a slightly more microcosm level when we look at your website. Maybe we need to focus on your solutions pages. If you have 7 to 10 key service or solutions pages, have you set yourself a target? So for example, increase the number of solutions page visitors per month from 400 to 500 by November 2023. And maybe that's a KPI to target. So maybe you don't even want to look at overall web traffic. Maybe in this example, you want to go, right, yes, we want to generate blog traffic. Yes, we want to drive more people to our white papers and our resources. But ultimately, we want to increase by 20% the number of leads that we're generating. Therefore, we are going to focus on an increase from the 400 that we're at now in terms of our page visitors for that to 500. And we want to keep the conversion rate the same. And that's something to aim towards. So it's May now, June, July, August, September, October, November. So you know you've got a 6-month period to focus on that objective. And that objective will ultimately line up with your lead gen strategy so that you're driving more inquiries for your sales team. And this is a highly measurable KPI. So it's what we call SMART. So it's very, very specific. We've got an increase that we want to be targeting. It's measurable. We're looking at a quantifiable number, increase the number of solutions page visitors from 400 to 500. It should be attainable. Your business growth target should be an attainable goal, something that you believe you can achieve. And in the same way, your KPIs and your smaller goals that are lined up with your website and how you want to achieve that lead generation and ultimately those goals should be attainable. It should be achievable. It should also be relevant. Let's not set goals and KPIs for the sake of setting goals and KPIs. Let's make sure they ultimately line up with what it is that you want to achieve as a business. And is it time bound? That's almost the most important thing of all. It's all well and good saying, oh, we want to increase the number of solutions page visitors from 400 to 500, but in what, in total or per month, but in what period of time are we working towards for that? And that's going to be really, really important as well. And then obviously we want to build out our strategy. And the interesting thing with this is that this is literally the overarching catch-all how we're going to get there. And something that we need to consider within the cyber and tech industry is that we are still seeing consistent and sustained market growth. So generally speaking, this is still a market in a heavy, heavy growth phase. Now, what's interesting about that is that there are a number of different ways to approach it, because a number of sectors and a number of markets might not necessarily be a growth market. It might be that, well, it's at where it is. So the focus should be on capturing customers from our competitors. So what we want to do is entice and convince customers that are with our competitors to come and be a part of our business, to use our product or to use our solution. Now, that might still be the case with your business. So even though you're working within a growth industry, there's always going to be that degree of maybe there are 10, 20, 30 players in the market offering what you offer, but you want to be the solution of choice. And so you want to convince people to move to you perhaps at a point of renewal or to come from those other businesses. That's going to be important, and that might still be part of your plan. But we also cannot forget that this is a growth market with increased market size. And fundamentally, what that means is that people are coming into this industry. They're going to be wanting to purchase. Maybe their business has never had the need for your solution before. So maybe it's not in their DNA to go, well, this is just something that we do and we do it all the time. So you're going to also need to build out a marketing plan and an online content plan that's going to excite, educate, entice, and encourage those who are coming into this growth market. So there's a twofold approach here whereby you need to segment your market, because you might have those customers that know what you do, know what you're about, and how are you going to sell your USP so that you're the business of choice. But you may also have those segments of the market that are growing businesses that didn't have a need for, say, cybersecurity per se in the same way 2 or 3 years ago, but now they do, and they've got a strong level of investment to invest within that. So you do need to consider that market that you're operating in. And this example for cybersecurity specifically, it's believed that total addressable market may reach $1.5 trillion to $2 trillion, approximately 10 times the size of the vended market. And this growth is, as I say, not looking to slow down. I mean, there are jobs and roles that we predict will happen in 2030, 2035 that don't even exist yet. You know, a certain percentage of roles in the global market that we don't even have. You look at the growth of AI, that's only going to take us down one direction. But how do we then build a strategy that works within this world, within this environment? And from an SEO perspective, I could talk for hours about SEO alone, but something that I deeply want you to think about within your sector is this model, the concept of expertise, authority, and trust. So if there's one thing that you take away from this session in terms of kind of search engine optimization specifically, especially within your industry, is these 3 things. So yes, you know, keyword mapping, the targeting of keywords, how our website is giving some technical signals to Google in terms of our site health, our keyword optimization, what it is that we do. Those things are fundamentally important and should be part of your SEO strategy. However, underlying all of that is ensuring that you build out website content that does these 3 things, that demonstrates your expertise as a brand, that demonstrates your authority, and also that demonstrates your trust and your trustworthiness as an organization. This EAT algorithm update was actually something that happened a couple of years ago, about 3 years ago now, maybe 3.5, 3. And it, in particular, impacted the healthcare sector. You can imagine why. You know, healthcare, private healthcare, they need to demonstrate expertise, authority, trust. But broadly speaking, it is an algorithm update that is still fundamentally important. And when you're working in a sector such as yours, it's very, very important that you're creating high quality content and an online plan that does all of these 3 things. Not only will it benefit your customers, your target market, your customers or clients in terms of how you position your brand, but you can achieve tangible results off the back of it. I've left the client name off this, but this is an example of a services-based business that I was working with from 2000. We still are, but this is a graph from the November of 2021 through to the end of 2020, the start of 2023. It's from Google Search Console. It's real data, and it is an example of clicks and impressions, click-through rate. Don't worry about the average position. That's a really misleading statistic on Google Search Console because it ties in everything that you're ranking for, even on page 5, page 6, so it can be quite misleading. The key that you want to look at here in this example is the clicks and impressions, which is what's highlighted in the graph. The main content plan for this client was very, very heavily focused on EAT, education, authority, trust. We'd done all that keyword targeting, keyword work. We ensured the site was well mapped, and it created some good visibility prior to this work. And then from this point onwards, we focused very, very heavily on quality content, downloadable assets and guides, informational content, ensuring that the solutions pages were very, very heavily focused on the solution and were customer focused. And all of that content and all of that work throughout this time, we continue to see strong visibility increases for target keywords and also ultimately impressions and clicks. And all of that holistic work on the outside was feeding in to the focused keyword-based work that we'd also been doing. So why am I sharing this with you? Because it's so important that we consider, especially from an SEO perspective, this slightly more holistic approach to education, authority, and trust, as well as just simply, am I targeting the right keyword, and is my site, fast enough and technically sound? And it's a long-term process. I need to add that. It's a long-term process. This client is seeing massive wins this year, some of which we can directly attribute to work that was carried out 12 months ago. So that's how it works in terms of the long game as well. And then what we want to do is build out your touch points. So what are the tactics and actions? How are we going to get to where we need to be? And what we need to consider very, very heavily is that as a benchmark, broadly speaking, HubSpot actually suggests that 8 touches is a good benchmark number of touch points with a brand. That's obviously a very general statistic. Some brands will need 1 or 2, other brands will need 16. But what you really need to consider within the cyber and tech industry is where your touch points fit. At what point are people getting that first engagement with the brand? And I would suggest that a lot of the time, the website may well not be the first touch point. It might be elsewhere. The website could come in as the second, third, or fourth touch point in the customer's journey. And often when we think website, we think SEO, we think visibility, the mind naturally goes to, and that is the first time they see us. So somebody searches, cybersecurity solutions, maybe on a regional level, cybersecurity solutions, Gloucestershire, for example. Yes, you want to be visible for that, but have they already heard of your brand? And if they have, is your website then giving them the right journey so that you encourage them through conversion? You want to be visible for those mid-funnel searches, as we call them, when people are looking for solutions, they're looking for the answers to their queries. But are you considering where in the user journey that is taking place? Because it may well not be that it's the first time that they've engaged with your brand. And I'm going to touch upon this now because in a moment I'm going to talk about multi-channel and multi-tactical approach and that sort of thing. So I just want us to think about, as part of our tactics and actions, at what point in that customer flow, in that journey, are we is our website, and where does our online presence fit within all of this? And then finally in this strategy model is control. And control is kind of a fancy word for how do we monitor and measure success? How do we identify what's working and what isn't? And I'm going to be frank, I'm going to be open with you. In the cyber and tech industry, it is a particularly challenging industry to quantify success. Full stop. It is. There are multiple reasons for that, but a really important thing to consider is where we are moving towards with data and cookies and third-party cookies. Now, within the cyber and tech industry in general, you will tend to find as well, if your customers are in cyber and tech or IT themselves, they're going to be very, very aware of GDPR compliance, privacy controls, and large numbers of the target market will opt out of cookies, reject cookies, have cookie blockers on their computers, so that no matter what you popping up on your website, they've got cookie blockers in place from day one. We see it very, very heavily with customers, especially within this sector, whereby when they started to introduce cookie blockers on their site, when GDPR compliance started to come in more effect, the traffic that we saw drop off in terms of data analysis was huge. Now, obviously, that's not real. That's not a real volume drop off. That is a quantifiable data drop off. So what we need to do more and more within the cyber and tech industry is focus very, very heavily on trends as well, and trend analysis. And if you're not already set up for Google Analytics, if you're not already set up for GA4, for example, then that is something that you really, really want to be considering, because GA4 is more and more tailored towards machine learning, understanding trends to be able to quantify success, whereas the old Google Analytics, Universal Analytics, was very, very heavily focused on actual numbers and actual data. But in this move towards this cookieless future, shall we say, GA4 is where you're at. What I'm going to share in the chat with you now is a guide to digital strategy for marketing managers. The link will be in the deck as well, so that if you did want to access this, I can see Jim's shared the link as well to our fundraising in the chat, so that's fab. So if anybody did want to give a small donation to our charity partner, help get us over the £1,000 mark, obviously that would be much appreciated. I'm popping in the chat here a guide to digital strategy for marketing managers. Again, the link will be in the deck, but if you want to find out a little bit more about how to approach these things, we do have a guide for that. Let's talk a little bit now about building trust through your website. So I've talked a lot about education, authority, and trust, but what does that actually look like? How can we do that physically on our website? Well, first things first, we can do it through association. And I think in the cyber and tech industry, association is incredibly prevalent. I'm going to show you a couple of real life examples in a moment, but demonstrating brand alignment is something that I find that businesses within this sector can do an awful lot more. Partnerships, collaborations, joined up ways of thinking, working, and delivering a solution. How can you find creative ways on your website to demonstrate association, so that it's not just your brand in isolation, but it's your brand in association with other brands? It might be the solutions that you offer, excuse me, the platforms that these solutions are built in. But there are also other ways to do this, and consider how you can go about doing that specifically for your business. Another key thing that's vitally important within this sector is customer advocacy. So reviews, quotes, testimonials, and happy clients and customers. How can you better demonstrate that within your website and within your online presence? Things like reviews on your Google business profile are incredibly important. They're incredibly important if you're a restaurant on the high street. But obviously, if you're a cyber or a tech business that perhaps offers a solution, people are buying into people. Yes, you might offer a kind of a product, but they're buying into you. You know, the way that we are as an agency. Yes, we want to generate an ROI for our clients. Yes, we want to do marketing tactics that line up with their business goals. But ultimately, if we don't offer a team of experts and specialists that can guide, can influence, can give consultancy, can respond within 24 hours, can be on the phone when things get really, really tough for you as a business, then we're only offering part of what we're about. So consider that within your business as well. If you're offering a cybersecurity solution, for example, how do you make your clients happy? Because it's not just going to be giving them that cybersecurity solution. It's them knowing that you've got their back when that boom happens, or when that moment happens, and you're there for them after it just as much as you're there for them before it. And what better way to demonstrate that than by getting it from your customers? Maybe you had a really nice email from a customer, or a member of your team did. Can you use that content kind of anonymously, or can you ask for permission and say, would you mind if we use this as a quote? You know, there are so many ways to approach how you can demonstrate customer advocacy, but let it come from the best possible people, your customers and clients, rather than from your own mouth as a business. And then, of course, in line with that, there's demonstrable expertise. So case studies, evidenced successes, and real life examples, anonymous if needs be. You know, again, I see a lot of businesses in the cyber and tech industry that when they first come on board with this, I'm encouraging them, first things first, we need to ramp up your case study game. We've got 2 or 3 key case studies. Let's turn that into 5 to 10 really valuable case studies. And often the reticence is because perhaps there's been an NDA, or even if there's not an NDA, you just can't necessarily demonstrate that you're working with a specific brand. However, when we get into conversation, we realize that that company is very, very comfortable saying, we worked with a major leading brand in the banking sector, in the finance sector, in the automotive sector. We worked with a company in the automotive industry to provide an IT solution that generated, a 98% increase in XYZ, however you want to approach that. But you can then be a bit more creative and think outside the box, so that you can demonstrate that expertise and showcase how influential you are as an organization, even if you cannot specifically name the brand or the business perhaps that you've worked with. How else do we showcase kind of trust through our website? Well, demonstrating that you yourself are a trustworthy partner as well. Something that I don't see enough of is businesses demonstrating how they consider their own cybersecurity. So you might be looking after customer data. You might offer this solution for your customers, but are you also showing them that, guess what? We've got our own cybersecurity in check. We're good. We're sound. We've got XYZ. Trust us. When you come on board with us, you know that you're in good hands. Not only are we protecting your business and your customers, but we are protecting your relationship with us. And then as a business, how can you effectively demonstrate that online and say, guess what? Our cybersecurity is sound. We've got cybersecurity essentials, or we've done this, or we have regular XYZ, but we know that we've got this in place and that your data is protected with us as well. And one of the most important elements that is often, I think, negated in the cyber and tech industry, and it's something that I mentioned earlier as well, is showcasing your human side. And it's very easy within IT, SaaS, to focus very, very heavily on the product and the solution and how that solution solves the problem for your customer. But often the online presence on the website leaves the human side way behind. And I've worked with some really, really exciting brands where they do a fantastic job of demonstrating a number of the things that I've just talked about in terms of expertise, how qualified they are for this, ROI generated. But you've got to dig 5 pages deep to see like a human face, or maybe you don't even see a human face at all in terms of online presence, imagery, website. And more now, you need to make sure that your online presence is demonstrating the human side of the brand. So meet our sales team, meet our customer support team, meet your account managers, meet the people behind the scenes. Here's the marketing team that you might never have any contact with. Are you introing these people through automated emails, through your website landing pages? Is your meet the team page effective enough? You tend to find actually that in the service-based industry, whether it be digital marketing like us, healthcare, cyber and tech, professional services in general, you tend to find that the Meet the Team page is often something like the second most visited page. So kind of after the home page, you'll tend to find that the Meet the Team section of the website is where people go the most. And then after that might be a solutions page, blog content, so on and so forth. And there's a reason for that. And again, it's because it's a massive trust piece. If people don't warm to your team, if they don't think that the individuals on your team have got the expertise, if there's any gaps there, that can make a massive difference on whether or not that user becomes a lead or not. So do not underestimate the importance of showcasing your human side as an organization throughout your online presence, your website, and on other channels and tactics as well. And again, it seems obvious, but are you demonstrating awards and accreditations? Often not enough. Demonstrating success within your industry. So, have you been shortlisted, or are you going to achieve an award for customer service or customer service within the tech sector? Or have you put things in place like ISO 9001 so that you're demonstrating excellence in customer care, customer support? Have you got any of those accreditations? A bit like the cyber security accreditation or things that I mentioned earlier, to literally rubber stamp what it is that you do, so that you don't have to spend 500 words explaining it, but you can literally slap a very clear, very obvious sign on key pages, on your homepage, on solutions pages, to convince the target market instantly that you should be the partner of choice? Have you put those things in place? Maybe you have put these things in place, but if you're not communicating them effectively to your customers, then that's something that you need to consider. Just the last couple of things. Charitable alignment is really, really important. I was shouting from the rooftops at the start about our charity partner. CSR, so corporate social responsibility, rolls off the tongue, but so too now should environmental, social governance, and how that needs to be clearly demonstrated through your website. How are you as a business within the cyber and tech industry addressing ESG, environmental social governance? How are you showcasing as a brand that you are sensitive to the needs of the world, actually, and the wider community? Because we've got a whole new workforce coming in now. We've got Gen Z, we've got 21-year-old grads to 23-year-old grads coming into the world of work. Their attitude towards a number of areas, from D&I, so diversity and inclusion, through to ESG, is huge. And this segment of the market will soon become the decision makers within your industry. Your sales team will be speaking with them. Your business will be marketing to them. You're not always going to be marketing to millennials or the baby boomer generation, as it were. These generations move through, and they all have their different kind of focuses, desires, wants, needs from partnerships. And also from a recruitment perspective, if you want to appeal to people within the cyber and tech industry, that we do a lot of work in employer branding, if you want to appeal to people within the cyber and tech industry, which at times can be a very, very challenging industry to recruit in, to find people that have got A, the right skill set, and B, the right cultural fit for your brand, then demonstrating things like your environmental, social governance, your attitudes towards diversity and inclusion is massively important. Whether you're a British or international business, doesn't make any difference. You have to approach these things and really consider them very, very carefully in terms of how you're positioning your brand. And it's fundamentally important within the cyber and tech industry. A final little trust sort of signal that you may not have considered is more heavily demonstrating through your online presence engagement metrics. So I've seen some fantastic stuff recently where a website might evidence its follower count on social media more clearly through its website, or perhaps how many downloads an asset has had. So let's say you've got a fantastic white paper, a document or a report, and it's gated content. Are you able to put a small plugin, a small widget on your website that says this has been downloaded 1,000 times in the last month? That sort of thing can help get people over the fence. It can help you ultimately generate leads, because it will help convince that person to pump in their name, email address, business details, and download that asset, because they know that, guess what, 1,000 other businesses have done it as well. I mentioned that we do a lot of work with Conforte, but I just wanted to quickly sort of showcase 3 slides that just kind of pull together some of the bits that I've been speaking about as well, in terms of how Conforte approach kind of building trust on their website. And it's amazing. You just literally, this is a screen grab from the homepage. They've got that strong statement of "we protect your data," which kind of resonates on a number of levels. Obviously, Conforte are an international brand, but here, we've got Conforte is recognized in the Gartner Hype Cycle for Data Security 2022. Click to get the full report from Gartner. On the left-hand side in that body copy, more than 500 companies around the world trust our many years of experience because we know how to protect data. Every word in that statement is of value. Every word in that statement resonates on multiple levels. More than 500 companies. So we've got a volume of trust around the world. We've got global, international, many years of experience. So we've got the longevity within their sector, and ultimately they know how to protect data. That's the skill thing. So that entire sentence, that sort of total value proposition that they've put together above it as well, showcases what the brand is about. And it doesn't take many words to do that. Here on another line, further down, Forrester reveals Conforte could drive ROI of 305%. There's the trust in terms of what they can achieve in terms of a tangible result, but also there's the trust by association, the trust from third-party reference. So it's not all coming from Conforte. Forrester reveals it. You can trust Forrester. And then obviously they've put things in place like an ROI calculator. And finally, it goes even further. You know, the cybersecurity specialist Conforte has developed encryption software that cannot be tracked. And there's your date, your reference, your alignment again, you know. And then their own study and press release on the right-hand side, cyber attacks. 82% of all companies in Europe are already victims. Study and press release by Conforte AG. At every level, Conforte demonstrates that you can, the education, the authority, and the trust. And there's just 3 simple screenshots to sort of showcase what that looks like in the flesh, in person. So I'm conscious of time, and there's some really fab stuff to go through. Let's talk a little bit about ensuring a through line between marketing and sales with a slightly more kind of multi-channel approach to this. If you've got any questions as well, do pop them in the chat, although I'm hoping to stay on at the end and open it up if anybody does have any questions. So I'll be quite happy for even a few minutes after the full hour. If anybody does have any further questions, I'd be more than happy to answer those. Alternatively, you can grab me on LinkedIn. But ultimately, what you want to do is build a content plan that resonates, and build a content plan that resonates with your target audience. Well, how do we do that? I want to share this model with you. 99% of you are probably more than familiar with this. It was actually, I think it was initially used, or it was definitely used as part of a sort of terrorism model in terms of kind of attacks and the pre and post. And then since then, it's been much more widely used for cybercrime and cyber attacks and that form of conflict as well. And it's the concept of the boom, you know, that boom moment, which is the point of breach. And on the left, you've got pre-breach. Then in the central point, you've got the attack and breach, and then you've got post-breach. So obviously, pre-breach is all about reducing the likelihood of attack by addressing threats, vulnerabilities, and configuration issues. The attack and breach period is that moment of boom. That's the boom moment. And then beyond that, you're reducing the impact of a successful attack via rapid detection, notification, and recommended response guidance. I've got a note in the deck as well where you can access this model and some copies surrounding it, and I've referenced where I've taken this from. But obviously the first part as well is months, weeks, days, hours, and then it goes through into, you know, minutes, hours, days, weeks, months. And why is this important? Well, you can apply this model to a number of your customers in that sometimes they don't know they need your solution really until they really need it. Like they don't know that they need your solution until that point happens. A really crude example of that would be if I was sat back on a sofa drinking a glass of red wine. I always use this example, and I do quite like a glass of red wine. And I rush to do something and I spill half the glass on my sofa. Wow, boom, red wine everywhere. I never knew I needed a surface cleaner until that moment. And then I'm in the market and I'm there and I'm looking. That might be the case in this example. However, if a business knows that they could be vulnerable to something, then there's going to be a lot of informational searching, researching, engaging with content in the build up to that point of breach as well. And where I'm going with this is that you should be building a multi-channel content plan that considers this kind of customer journey. So on our website, on our blog, on our social media channels, on our insights, on our white papers, on our resources, have we got content that speaks to people on an informational, educational level, and then on a solutions focused level as well? And when we're doing that, are we even taking a model like this and even considering where this content is focused? And I'm going to show you some lovely workflow stuff in a minute so that you can even automate how you're communicating and when you're communicating this stuff to your customers. But are you building an online content plan that's at the right stages? So have we got a really useful resource and guide on how to reduce the likelihood of attack? But then also, are we building excellent resources on rapid detection, notification, recommended response guidance? Are we putting things in place from those resources to drive people to our solution, which could be a cybersecurity solution, an instant fix? We are here for you. We'll have this sorted for you within 24 hours, that sort of thing. How are you building online content that does this? And ultimately, are you then executing a plan that tackles all stages of the customer journey? And that's not just going to be through your website. You're going to want to embrace social media more. And I do see LinkedIn being used throughout the cyber and tech industry and the IT and SaaS industry in general. However, genuinely, not enough. I've seen some fantastic results from paid LinkedIn advertising campaigns where I've seen resource downloads at £2 a pop, which has been a really good return on investment for a brand. I've seen high levels of engagement from key stakeholders, individual profiles at cyber and tech businesses. But the point is that a lot of businesses still aren't maximizing LinkedIn within this sector. And again, some of the elements I talked about earlier through your website, it gives you that opportunity to humanize your brand, to establish yourself as a thought leader, to increase customer interactions, to attract top talent, and ultimately to discover new audiences as well. And how can that all come together? Well, it's a simple graphic. I'm only going to touch upon it, but bringing together all that content marketing work that I've just been talking about, your direct outreach and your mindful networking as well. And by moving them into this Venn diagram, LinkedIn sits somewhere in the middle where it brings it all together. So are we utilizing it to increase the reach and engagement of our content marketing? Are we using it for direct sales outreach? And are we using it for mindful networking to build and cultivate a strong following? Some nice examples of brands that are using within this sector that are using LinkedIn very effectively. I highly recommend checking out CAE's LinkedIn activity. It's fantastic. It's regular, it's frequent, it's consistent, it's on brand, but ultimately as well, it's educational, it's informative, it's of great value. In this example, in our latest security ebook, What You Do When the Worst Happens, we help you navigate your cyber recovery plan by responding before a potential cyber attack becomes critical to your business. Start creating those much needed more good days. More good days is a brand message. But again, this is considering how to build cyber recovery into their plan. It comes back to that boom model I was sharing with you, where they're considering how they're resonating with their market pre, during, and post that moment of boom. Cloud are a brand that we do a lot of work with. They have a solution within sort of the finance sector, and it's about it's not only about the product, it's also about the people. It's a balance of the both. But again, guides, white papers, downloadable assets are of huge importance, and having a plan that ensures that we generate as many downloads of those assets as possible through both web presence and visibility and also social media is fundamentally important. And then bringing the two of those things together so that you're showing the faces of the brand as well. These trust signals are massively important. Meet our CEO. And Peter Simmons, actually, in this example, gets really strong engagement from his own personal LinkedIn, which is equally or even more important than some of the content that can go out from a brand page and from the brand presence. Anytime I talk about LinkedIn on a webinar or a seminar, I always point people towards LinkedIn's SSI tool because we're a big advocate for it and it's a hugely valuable tool. So there's a little nugget for you. Click on that link when you get the deck through, or go to linkedin.com/sales/SSI. It updates daily. It gives you a score out of 100. It ranks you within your industry and also within your network. And it utilizes those 4 components on the right-hand side: establishing your professional brand, finding the right people, engaging with insights, and building relationships. And it's just a super useful tool to see where you're at as an individual on your LinkedIn journey. And what I do find is very effective is it can help focus the mind so that you take your LinkedIn activity down a certain direction, whether that be engaging with insights, establishing your brand, or building better connections and relationships. And so finally, before I sort of open it up and ask if anybody's got any questions, I just want to reference how we can bring some of this stuff together, really. I've touched upon a multi-channel approach. Obviously, email marketing can fit within that as well. But I've got 3 examples here of kind of workflows. So we do a lot of work on LinkedIn with HubSpot and with clients on their own HubSpot and HubSpot presence as well. And a big part of that is a customer journey fueled by content marketing so that we can engage and excite and sort of cultivate a warm audience that is then feeding through into the sales team. And these are just 3 very straightforward workflow examples as to how within the cyber and tech industry you may better engage your audience and drive them through a strong customer journey. For example, somebody might start off by clicking an ebook download link. So I've mentioned before the importance still of white papers, reports, useful resources and content that delve a little bit deeper than blogs. Perhaps the first event, the first time you've captured your customers' data is at that point. Maybe that person is then tagged as a subscriber. If they've opted in, if they've said, yes, and I'm happy to hear from you, I'm happy to receive content from you, obviously they're then going to get an immediate email with the download link to download that resource. But it shouldn't just end there. Why not send that follow-up email, introduce the brand, introduce the social channels, introduce educational resources, drive the customer towards those other things. Then continue to send relevant blog posts related to the ebook topics. You've already given them a downloadable asset where you've asked them to pump in their details, their name, business name, email address to download that resource. You don't need that again. Give them quality marketing content. Point them towards blogs, things that your business offers, added value. And that's the end of that kind of journey. But maybe then beyond that, at that point, maybe that's where on that blue trigger, the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th, perhaps that's the point that the sales team also become involved. Like if they've shown engagement, if they've clicked through from that email, maybe you start to go, right, this lead is warming. Then the next point in the journey might be for somebody to pick up the telephone and give them a call. Oh, I noticed a couple of weeks ago you downloaded our ebook, and I know that we've been sending you some really, really valuable content since then. It'd be really good to pick up. Would you like to have a conversation surrounding this? And maybe that's where it starts to move through. Or maybe your marketing team qualify it further before it goes to the sales team. But this is an example of how, as a brand, you need to nurture those customers through the pipeline. Another example might be somebody signing up for a newsletter. Maybe that gives them welcome email with introductory information. And then maybe there's a topic workflow that's relevant to the blog through which they initially signed up for. That's a nice idea. So that could be a really, really good lead gen tactic. So maybe they signed up for the newsletter on a blog page that is relating to digital transformation. Maybe your company offers digital transformation for businesses to move from, hard drive storage into the cloud and so on and so forth, hard copy files into digital. Do you then start to move them through a workflow and a sort of marketing and sales plan that is more heavily focused towards digi transformation? And finally, is there an opportunity here for new customer welcome workflows? So perhaps there's been an initial transaction that's been complete. We've done some great work with brands actually where it's post point of sale as well. So it's the first stages of engagement with the brand. Do they have a welcome email? Do they get weekly emails based on lead scoring? If they're regularly engaging, do you hook them in to webinars, events like this one? Do you then encourage them to engage further? Do you offer a sale offer workflow? Do you move them into something else? There are so many ways to cultivate those leads. And in your sector, I completely appreciate that often one lead can be of very, very high value. So, you could convert one customer, could be worth $250,000 to your business. That's maybe how it works. Could be worth more. So the point is that you may want to really invest in these workflows, even if you're dealing with a relatively small number of focused leads, because the nurturing process is incredibly, incredibly important. Fab. So I've had a question come through publicly on the chat. That's fine. I would also say, I'm going to look at this now. If you want to message me privately now, that's fine as well. It's very, very normal to that businesses don't necessarily want to publicly put their brand name out there. So if you want to drop me a private message, I can answer it publicly, but I'll keep your business name anonymous, and that's absolutely fine. But Peter McAvoy's come through. Bear with me because I'm reading this out loud for the first time. I was going to ask, what are your thoughts on the pending change to the SERPs, so Google Search Engine Results pages, GSE, Generative Search Experience? Is there anything we should be doing now to prepare for this imminent change? But I guess you'll be covering that in the event on the 29th of June. I was probably halfway through, you were probably halfway through typing that when I started talking about the AI event. Yes, we will be covering that in June. What I will say is that anything that I say to you at this point is incredibly early days. And we do also have, as I mentioned, a whole team that have been working on AI, and we are going to delve into this in much, much more depth in a few weeks' time. However, where we are potentially moving towards is a direction that we've been moving towards for a number of years. I went to a keynote talk 4 years ago from a chap called Rand Fishkin, who you may or may not have heard of him. He's a serious thought leader within the search engine kind of industry, and it was talking about Google taking traffic away from websites, right? So it was all about how you pump anything into Google, I'm a rugby fan. You could put Wales v South Africa, and if there was a game that weekend, you would see everything on the homepage of Google. You'd have the results, the substitutions, the, I don't know, top level info on match reports, and you haven't even got to click through to a website. That's somewhere that we've been moving to for a long, long time. What we're seeing more and more now with AI and the adoption of AI is that the challenge is not just allowing it to be stuck on search engines. So things are getting put in place. You think about ChatGPT, people are asking their questions and getting them answered on ChatGPT. Google is also now starting to adopt more and more AI, or sort of start to engage with it, where it's a little bit slow to the party actually versus some other organizations. So what we do have to consider is a lot of that side of things. So how AI is going to impact the customer journey online, through search engines, through websites, and how as brands we need to consistently work towards combating that and generating as much traffic and engagement and so on and so forth as we can. So that is something that we need to consider. But again, how AI is impacting search, how AI, not just from a marketing and a ChatGPT perspective, but the much bigger picture of AI, we're going to go into that in a lot more detail in June. So yeah, don't hesitate to come along to that. Gerardo, congratulations, Daniel. This is the nicest seminar I've had in the last few weeks, and I do almost 2 or 3 weekly. So if I consider that over the last month, that means it's the best out of about 12 to 20. So well, yeah, 12 to 15. So thank you very much for that, Gerardo. I appreciate that. That is praise indeed. If you enjoyed it, please don't hesitate to jump online. Reviews mean a lot. I've been talking to you guys about it earlier on, so please don't hesitate to jump on, leave us a review on our Google business profile, or indeed shout it from the rooftops on LinkedIn. Always goes a very, very long way. Jenny Peacock has come through and said, thanks, Dan. Very, very interesting. No problem at all. I've also had a private question come through regarding specifically content marketing and when to, so I'm just reading it now. Yeah, when to use data capture versus not. So when to have it as downloadable asset versus when to have it on your blog. Again, that is on a case-by-case basis. You can often relate it to the depth of the content. So if it's a much deeper piece of content, if it's more of a report or a narrative or a tool, I shared an interesting kind of competitor analysis type spreadsheet with you earlier. If your business offers a single page tool like that, maybe you want to offer that as a downloadable resource, but then maybe your blog or your insights section is going to have more copy-based content, informational content, things that don't need the lead capture. Again, that's going to vary on a case-by-case basis. Gerardo's asked the question, what strategy can we put in place to offer managed services from scratch with a new company that nobody knows? So if you're specifically there, Gerardo, talking sort of startup, really, I think it's a really good question, because obviously a lot of what I've talked about as well is where that first touch point with a brand comes, and if people are aware of your brand versus not. This might sound straightforward, but I think the most fundamentally important things is to identify the key USPs. What are the primary reasons that a business should choose us, or a customer should choose us over the competition? So how do we differentiate ourselves in the marketplace? Once we've got that, what is our total value proposition? So what is that single sentence, that catch-all gambit, not a mission statement, not our mission is to do X, Y, Z, but a TVP, a total value proposition. What as a business do we offer you? Bang, there it is. If it was on the back of a matchbox, that's what it would say. How do we sort of put that out there? And then from there, you need to identify how you're going to penetrate the market. And that's the challenge, because what you then need to look at initially is, what spend do we have? If the answer is decent spend, where do we want to spend it? And instantly you might want to generate brand awareness. So you might want to run campaigns where across LinkedIn or social channels that are very, very heavily focused on reach and engagement rather than lead gen. Maybe your initial focus is to go, we want to put this brand in front of as many prospective customers or businesses that might be interested in our services as possible. And then beyond that, where do you go from there? Do you look at a numbers game? You might initially need to create a large volume of content and drive very, very heavily a content marketing plan. Do you need to try and get 20 downloadable guides off the shelf? Do you need to generate a large number of blogs so that even if you're then putting that online, you can backdate them so that it appears that perhaps you've had content on your site for longer, or you have a very, very regular trickle through every week or every 2 weeks of really, really valuable content. You double down on the volume of that so that then you're maximizing your chance for visibility, for reach, for exposure. And ultimately, just finally on that, you may need to do some jobs to build up word of mouth and credentials that are seen as a loss leader. So you may need to approach going, look, if this is managed services, do we want to bring on a couple of customers? Do we want to actually look for organizations where we could even offer a solution, let's say a third sector organization, and go, right, we're actually going to offer this solution either free of charge or near free of charge for a short period of time, so that that organization benefits from what we're offering, but it enables us to do a case study. Maybe that's the partnership, that's the agreement. And then what you can do is start to build up a portfolio, which is something that you also won't have, because at the moment it's a new company, nobody knows it. So the truth is that I could talk for hours about how to approach marketing for kind of a startup or a brand that people don't yet really know or aren't really familiar with it. And there are so many ways to skin a cat, as it were, for want of a better expression. But the truth is that you then need to just really approach that in terms of how you're going to penetrate a growth market, but a market that is also highly competitive. How are you going to stand out, penetrate that, be seen, be heard, be visible, so that you start to generate business? Yeah, and I hope that answers your question, because again, I could spend hours just talking about that one thing, but there are so many different ways to approach it, and I think that visibility, reach, and engagement should be key. Fabulous. Any final questions before we draw this to a close? No? Fab. Well, I've had a couple of private messages come through to say how much people have enjoyed the session, as well as the public ones. So thank you ever so much. It's been really great to have you on board. As I say, you will be getting a follow-up. You'll be getting a recording. You'll also be getting access to the deck. If you have any further questions, or you'd like to chat further about marketing for the cyber and tech industry, or any digital in general, or anything that I've referenced on this webinar, don't hesitate to connect with me on LinkedIn. Let's take the conversation further. But otherwise, I wish you all the very, very best. Have a great rest of the week. Have a lovely weekend. I hope the sun shines wherever you are. And thank you to those of you who joined at 4:30 a.m. on the other side of the world. It's always fantastic to see diversity on these webinars. So thank you ever so much. Lovely messages coming through. Good luck. Cheers, everybody. Bye-bye.